knowledge. It's not free. You have to pay attention.
Mischievous, uh, excellent pattern. 11, 11, 12, 10. Um, as a 2-year-old, consistent. Another one, passed 2 fast races, 4.2, 4.2, or 2 races at 3, both at the fairgrounds. Now, here's another one.
Big horse, but light on his feet. And he's always showed up and been consistent and been right there with some of the top horses in training. In the Bluegrass Stakes, he showed his determination and his raw ability.
It's over! Zandon wins the Toyota Bluegrass!
I feel breeders will be really blown away by what a striking, outstanding looking horse he is.
Register now for the 2024 Past the Wire Kentucky Derby Seminar. In-depth analysis of every horse, contenders, pretenders, live long shots, and more. The Kentucky Derby Seminar on PastTheWire.com. Reserve your seat today. Remember, nobody does it better.
Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
First crop sires race. Maximum Mischief makes the lead with the most 2-year-old maiden special winners by any sire. On the backstretch, Mitoli and Omaha Beach close the gap with stakes performers from coast to coast. Vino Rosso finds his best and leads on the turn with 4 Grade 1 colts on dirt. But it's Mitoli with his 3rd TDN Rising Star, your champion freshman, leading an impressive Spendthrift Superfecta.
Ciao, ciao, everybody. Ladies first. We are ready to do the Kentucky Oaks by the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. And I think it's going to be an interesting year in both the Oaks and the Kentucky Derby. The Kentucky Derby by the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns will follow. As promised, I'm trying to do both shows early this year. So everybody's got time to do their handicapping and factor in the Thorograph Numbers and Patterns. If you do not yet have a reservation for the Past the Wire annual Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Oaks seminar, I strongly suggest you get one at pastthewire.com. I'll put a link to all the information into the description of this video, and grab a spot. We're going to cover the late pick 4, pick 5 on Kentucky Derby Day, ending with the Derby, cover the Oaks. And remember, this particular show and the Kentucky Derby Thorograph show are not necessarily complete handicapping. There's so much that goes into really handicapping a race and doing a race. And yes, of course, we're drinking the shortbread coffee like always. You need energy to do these shows. It's not easy, and knowledge is not free. You got to pay attention. So remember that, and you got to be careful who you pay attention to. So what we do on these shows, and we did it with Mage and Pretty Mischievous last year, and many other horses throughout the course of the year, White Barrio in the Classic, just so many horses. The numbers and the patterns don't lie. They are what they are. So we don't know post position yet. We don't know any, late additions or defections and stuff like that. So, all of that goes into play at the right time. But for now, we do know the numbers of the contenders, and we will be able to tell who looks like they're moving forward, who looks like they're going to regress, who's fast enough to win, who's not fast enough to win. And that information, alone and in and of itself is priceless on these big days. So we'll get into the Oaks. We'll take a look at the patterns. Everybody reads it differently. you may read the numbers different than I read the numbers, but you know, to each their own. Uh, if you're successful and you're winning, don't change it. Don't fix what ain't broke. If you're not, be open minded. You know, if it was as easy as you know, who's got the fastest number, then we wouldn't even need to be playing the horses anymore. We'd be, you know, having this conversation on a yacht off the coast of Monte Carlo. So it ain't that easy. You got to be able to really decipher these patterns and really be able to tell who's going forward, who's fast enough, who's not fast enough, and you know, who can win and who can't, because that's what it's going to come down to on Oaks and Derby Day, like it does in all these other races. So with that, we'll get right into the Kentucky Oaks, and we're doing this in two shows. We're doing an Oaks show and a Derby show. That seemed to be the majority consensus of those of you that expressed an opinion on whether you wanted one show or two. Personally, I would have preferred one and just like to run through it. Easier for me, but nobody cares what's easier for me. So I'm going to do what you guys wanted and gals and what's better for you. So with that, I believe that at this early stage, the Thorograph sheets are in alphabetical order of the horses that we believe are heading to the respective two races. We'll start with Candied from Todd Pletcher's barn. And on this show and on the Derby show this year, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on a couple of horses than I normally do as far as the handicapping, just because I've been watching this so close this year. And, you know, interestingly enough, the contender list, in my opinion, from a handicapping standpoint, not from the numbers, is a little shorter than it is in past years. So we'll offer a couple little tidbits as we go along, possibly. So, Candied, not in love with Candy's pattern, and interestingly enough, I'm not in love with a couple of Todd Pletcher's horses' patterns this year. So he'll probably sweep the Oaks and Derby. Now that I said that, so Todd, if that happens, you owe me one. Rapoli, you'll owe me one. But be that as it may. Candied as a 2-year-old started out pretty good. 5 at Saratoga, repeated the 5 at Keeneland, regressed to a 9.5 at the Breeders' Cup in November. I thought that race was better than it looked, but the number certainly didn't reflect it. But came back this year at Keeneland on a track that probably wasn't the best for her, but didn't really look like she went forward. She ran a 6 3/4. Might have needed the race, might go forward off the race, but I generally like when they equal or pass their best 2-year-old number in their first start at 3. That's usually indicative to me that it's a nice racehorse, and you know she didn't do that. So can she go forward? Yeah, but off a 6 3/4, she'd have to jump a little bit more forward than I'm willing to think she's going to, in order to make my list. But she does have a pattern that you know is no guarantee she's going to go forward, but can likely go forward. She's a little tricky to read because when a good horse or a horse you think is a good horse doesn't go past that 3-year-old number, but didn't really have the ideal setup, it may just be that she didn't get any better and didn't go forward, and she was better last year than she is this year. And if that's the case, she's not going to win the Kentucky Oaks, but we don't really know that for sure yet. Everland, 17, 14, 18 3/4, 17 as a 2-year-old. We're not going to set the world on fire with those numbers. Gets better at 3, 10 3/4, regresses to a 12, goes forward again, very typical. Go forward, regress, go forward again, to a 9.5 at Turfway Park. All 3 races at Turfway Park on the synthetic this year. Now moves to the main track. That becomes a question mark, but on the numbers, even anticipating a forward move, even a nice forward move, too slow in my book. So she'd really have to surprise and make a big jump forward to even contend, let alone win. Fiona's Magic, 18 3/4, 9 3/4, 10 and a half as a 2-year-old, all at Gulfstream Park. Comes back this year, goes forward somewhat. First start, she goes to 9 and a half, a little bit better than the 9 3/4. Then she runs a nice race of 7 and a half at Gulfstream. And then, I don't know, what happened. She's in the Oaks, but she runs a 29 and a half, and that ain't going to do it. So can we forgive the 29 and a half? Probably, if she's running in the Oaks. I don't think Michael Yates would run her if it was all that. But, going forward off the 7 and a half, probably enough to win. Probably not. But more of a question mark than a really, eye-catching pattern in my book. Jin from the ever dangerous Brad Cox, 13 and a quarter, 11 and a quarter, 7 3/4, regresses to a 12 to close out the 2-year-old year at Churchill Downs. This year comes back and runs a 7 3/4, so equals her best 2-year-old number, which we like. Doesn't go past it, equals it, but then regresses to a 10 3/4 and a 10 and a half. I like the paired 10s as a sign she's moving forward, but she certainly didn't maintain the kind of speed and kind of running that she was doing prior to that. So not in love with her pattern and her numbers either. Impel probably has the best pattern that we've seen thus far, in my opinion. Didn't run at 2. Obviously, that worked out well. At the fairgrounds, she runs a 6 1/4. Then she runs a 5 3/4 at Oaklawn. Then goes to Keeneland and runs a 5 1/2. So, if you've watched the shows last year, and one of the things I look for and love, and when we had Jeff Franklin on the show and talked about bounces and angles, he and I are pretty much in agreement. 6 1/2, 5 3/4, 5 1/2. You got that 6, 5, 5. That gradual but steady progression I love. Usually signals a good horse in a good barn coming to a peak race. This is the kind of filly can go 2, 3, 4 points forward like nothing. Seen that happen 1,000,001 times. Excellent, outstanding pattern in my opinion on Impel for Brad Cox. Into Champagne is a horse that I saw up close and personal in the paddock at Gulfstream Park, I think twice. Imposing specimen of a filly. But she seems to have not gone the right way, and her numbers kind of reflect that. She ran a 10 and a half at Ellis Park as a 2-year-old, comes to Gulfstream 10 and a half, then a 7, then back to a 10. So she's going zigzag. That Z pattern that we've talked about in the past. Not in love with the Z pattern to begin with, and definitely don't like it when they're coming to a bad Z race. But she looks like she's coming to a good Z race, so she may go back to the 7. She may go a little faster than the 7, 6, 5. Good enough to win? I don't think so. But according to a pattern, she is coming to a forward race. She just doesn't look fast enough. But on the racetrack, when you see her, she's going to look like a pretty filly. Just FYI, Breeders' Cup winner as a 2-year-old, 8 1/2, repeats the 8 1/2, runs an 8 1/4 to win the Breeders' Cup Filly Juvenile at Santa Anita. Comes back at Keeneland, runs a 4 1/2. This is what we like from good horses. She comes back and goes past her best 2-year-old number and does it convincingly. She goes from an 8 to a 4, 8 1/4 to a 4 1/2. That's a nice jump, 50%, cuts the number in half. Running back quick. Can she regress off that? Sometimes they do. Good horses don't. Good horses in good barns don't as much. Bill Mott is definitely one that could keep her good. I like the fact she went past that number. I'm a little concerned that she's running back as quick as she is, but we don't know how much she needed to race. Maybe she was a work short. Maybe she was 2 work short. Maybe that was a stepping stone race. So she's definitely one to pay attention to. But even if she does go forward, if Impel goes forward also, we got a horse race. So she's no lock by any stretch of the imagination. But we don't know where this filly is going to bottom out. She's got a good pattern. And if she doesn't regress and does go forward, she's a force in here. Lemon Muffin. Muffin has one race that's probably indicative that she's fast enough to contend, but only one out of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'd like to see more than that. But as a 2-year-old, 19 and a quarter, not setting the world on fire, 15, 11 and a quarter, 11 and a quarter paired up. Did handle Churchill Downs for what that's worth. Comes back as a 3-year-old, beats the best 2-year-old number with a 9 and a quarter, then runs a fast race at a 5 and a quarter, regresses off the fast race. Same thing like we talked about the danger with just FYI. Regresses off the 5 and a quarter to the 11. She run an 11 first time out. So she's another one that looks like that 5 and a quarter might have taken a little bit out of her. Don't love her pattern. Don't necessarily see her going forward off that regression. Might just be a little bit worse for wear at this early point. She's danced a lot of dances. Leslie's Rose is one that I've got a difficult time deciphering her pattern, but we're going to do our best. A 5 and a quarter at Aqueduct in November as a 2-year-old. Comes back at Gulfstream, runs a big race, 4 and a half. Regresses to a 9 and a half, comes back and almost equals the Gulfstream race at Keeneland. She runs a 4 3/4, but she did it very visually impressively and looked good doing it. So she may just be getting good. I think it's too soon to say she's got that Z with the 494. Maybe we can find a legitimate excuse for the Gulfstream race. I know that her rider Irad wasn't thrilled with it, and he did say in his post-race interview at Keeneland that he learned a little something about her and was confident she was going to run better. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say she's a contender if she goes forward off that 4 3/4, and she is likely to. So of the Pletcher horses, she might be the one whose pattern I like better. So probably bet the other one. Nah. But moving right along, our Pretty Woman. Our Pretty Woman has got to get faster, but she's got a pattern suggesting that she will. No starts at 2, another one that started at 3, and I like the 2 horses that didn't start at 2, interestingly enough, pattern-wise. We got 11 and a quarter, 8, 6 and a quarter. She's gone forward every start, every month. January, February, March, she went forward. Now, we're waiting to see what she does. So I tend to think she's going to go forward again. If she goes forward off the 6 and a quarter, 2, 3, 4 points, which is possible. I mean, she's gone, 3 points forward the 2 times that she went. So that puts her at a 3. I think you're going to run a little fast in a 3 to win, but it puts her in the conversation for sure. And if she goes forward more than that this time, then she's definitely in the conversation. But I like her pattern for sure. Power Squeeze. Not in love. 15, 12, 14. As a 3-year-old, goes past the number considerably, 6, regresses off the 6, 11 and a half, then comes back to the 6 at Gulfstream. At Gulfstream. So, again, another one I think maybe too soon to really call that Z or zigzag pattern, but tough to gauge for me. Can she go forward? Yeah. I tend to think she's more likely to run back to that 6. Or right around it. If she goes forward, maybe a 5, not going to do it. Maybe repeats the 6, also not going to do it. So that's about what I see coming from Power Squeeze. Recharge, another from Steve's Bond. Her pattern's good, but just not fast enough. She's got 11 and a half as a 2-year-old, comes back, runs a 12, not better, but, close enough that we're not going to knock her too much. Then equals it at 11 and a half at Sunland, 11 at Oaklawn. So this year we got 12, 11 and a half, 11. I like that steady, gradual improvement, but I don't know that 11 is, fast enough that even with more improvement is going to be fast enough to win the Kentucky Oaks with some of these fillies that she would, have to beat in here. So 11, I like it, but I'd like it a lot better if it was 7, 6, 5, something, something in that vicinity, and it's not. So, oh well. Tap it genially. Interesting. 7.5, 7 3/4 as a 2-year-old. Comes back as a 3-year-old. 7 3/4, 7.5, 7.5. There's only really, this was only runs in the sevens. 5 starts, 5 times in the sevens. Very interesting. Now, I love that steady 7, 7, 7. That usually shows me there's a forward move in there. But she's kind of repeated that 7 1 or 2 more times for comfort for me. So I tend to think that maybe she's very honest. That is who she is. And we're going to see it again. If she jumps forward, it won't shock me. If she, duds off that won't shock me either. But with only 5 starts, I tend to think and view her pattern as just a steady horse, and probably going to see the same. Probably going to see the same from her. So I anticipate her running right around that 7, and that's not going to be fast enough to win. Tarifa, interesting. Don't like the 2-year-old pattern, but I certainly like the 3-year-old pattern. Another from Brad Cox. We've got 8 1/4, 13 and a half as a 2-year-old. As a 2-year-old, correct. As a 3-year-old, 8 1/2, 6 3/4, 5 1/2. Steady progression, but not huge progression. That's going to make this filly want to regress or bounce. So 8 1/2, 6 3/4, 5 1/2. Really sharp pattern at 3 for Brad Cox. He's obviously figured this filly out a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with that. So with that, dangerous, forward-moving pattern, good pattern, and fast enough. Going forward off that 5 makes her fast enough to be a competitor in here and win. Torpedo Anna. Interesting horse, too. 8 1/2, 4 3/4, and a 9 as a 2-year-old. So off the 4 3/4, she run a 9. She come back as a 3-year-old, and she run a 4 3/4. Running back quick. I tend to think she may regress a little bit off of that. If she doesn't, and I'm wrong, and goes forward, and you believe she's going to go forward, she's a contender without question. And here's what's interesting about a filly like this and analyzing her pattern when we have so few starts with which to do it. Okay, as a 2-year-old, she run an 8 1/2 first time out, and then goes forward 4 points to a 4 3/4. Okay. Now she comes back and she equals that 4 3/4 at 3. So does she repeat that 2-year-old pattern where the second start she goes forward, or is the 4 3/4 right off the bench something that's going to make her regress? That's always an interesting question and a dilemma. And that's when you really got to get into the barn and the last race and how the barn usually performs in that situation and how they, point and train their horses. McPeak is one of the toughest guys to read at that. Some guys you can really read. Some guys are a little bit more challenging. So with that, and with all that, I glean from this, I'm a little concerned that she can, regress off that. I mean, again, she's another one who, whichever way she goes, will not surprise me, but I'd be more inclined to gamble that she regresses. But if she doesn't, contender, she's fast enough. And if she goes forward, she's certainly fast enough. So Torpedo Anna is one that we'll have to decipher a lot more, get a lot more into her replays and analysis at the seminar. But as far as the patterns go, she's one that should be considered. Ways and Means, fantastic pattern, and a fantastic pattern with probably one of the worst trips that I've seen since I can remember. But as a 2-year-old, she runs a 5 at Saratoga, then comes back and runs a 4 3/4 at Saratoga. She comes back in an extremely tough spot at Gulfstream, gets an horrendous trip, and still winds up with a 4 3/4. She goes forward off that, which she likely will, because she'll probably get a better trip, and that other trip probably gave her a hell of a lot of seasoning. And Chad, brings his horses along the right way. Absolutely a horse to be reckoned with. And if she goes forward off that 4 3/4, as she likely will, for a number of reasons, she is definitely one of the prime horses in here. Where's My Ring? 14, vet scratch, 13, 14, 16 and a half, 11 and a half is a 2-year-old. Comes back this year, got faster. Santa Anita 6, Santa Anita another 6, Aqueduct 7. 2 steady races, didn't go forward, regressed. Don't like it, don't like that pattern. I like off those 2 steady races when they go forward. Now, maybe shipping cross country to Aqueduct had a little something to do with that. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm not in love with that pattern, because after those 2 paired 6s, I like her to go forward, and she didn't. Who could ask for Mo? Unfortunately, she's slow on the numbers, but visually, I like the way she looks when she runs, and I think she's got more in her, but the numbers don't show it. Even though she's got a pattern that says she's going to move forward, it doesn't say she's fast enough. 14, 13 3/4 as a 3-year-old. Those were her 2-year-old numbers. As a 3-year-old, 13 3/4, 12 1/4, 12. So they're going the right way as a 3-year-old. 13 3/4, 12 1/4, 12. Where's she going to go? Even if she cuts that number in half to a 6, that's not fast enough to win this race. So as much as I respect her off my eyes, and I trust my eyes as much as I trust any number, might I throw a horse like this in as a bomb? I don't know. I'd have to be reaching, because I generally don't like to bet horses that the numbers tell me are too slow. But, sometimes we step out of our comfort zone and just, at 20, 30 to 1 can take a stab if the pace sets up right and it looks like there's enough speed on paper in here. But on paper, on the numbers and the patterns, unfortunately, she does look a little bit on the slow side for me. So, I'm going to have to say too slow. And those are the Oaks fillies. So we've got some horses to really watch and pay attention to that kind of jump out at us. We got a couple that, on the surface look good, but when you dig deeper, might not be that good. So, a lot to decipher, a lot to, a lot to check out. So we got the Kentucky Derby, Thorograph Numbers and Patterns coming up. We got our seminar coming up. Thorograph puts out a great seminar closer to the Kentucky Derby on the Kentucky Derby. They'll go into more of their thoughts on the numbers and patterns. If you're so inclined, you can go to Thorograph.com and check theirs out. Like I said, ours we're going to put in the description of the video. I encourage you all to join us. It'll be a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll identify some plays and plays against. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Let me know what you think in the comments. Again, we got this out early this year, so everybody can get a head start on the numbers and the patterns. I think I read them as good as anybody in the game. Been doing it a long time. So, take it from where it comes. Thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all on the Thorograph Kentucky Derby show, and I hope to see all or most of you at the seminar. If you missed the live version, there is a replay, so no worries about that. Thanks, everybody. So let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know any other shows that you want coming up, and if there's any races you really want me to try to do the Thorographs on, speak now in the comments or forever hold your peace. Grazie, everybody. Ciao for now.
With new DRF All Access past performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all 3 past performance formats. Go to drf.com and use coupon code 1FREEPP for a free single card today.
Mini, a top 10 first crop sire in 2023, standing at McMahon of Saratoga. 14 first crop winners, including My Shady Lady, winner of the $500,000 New York Stallion Series 5th Avenue Stakes, Grade 2 winner Winstock, and Stakes winner Solo Shot. Solo Mini, the 7th leading freshman sire and the only top 10 freshman sire with a Grade 1 or Grade 2 winner. He sired a $700,000 2-year-old at the OBS April sale. His juveniles sold for nearly 6 figures on average, more than 12 times the stud fee. Solomini, a controversial DQ from being a Grade 1 winner by 2-time Horse of the Year Curlin, standing at McMahon of Saratoga Thoroughbreds. Sure Bet Coffee. Put the giddy up in your cup. Tracking trips with Pick 6 King John Stettin. It's one of the best tools in horse racing for any level of player. It's your second set of eyes, spotting troubled trips, betting angles, track trends, horses to watch and favorites to fade, 10 figs, ticket structure, and more. At Tracking Trips, you're a friend with benefits. Not a member? You must hate winning money. Join Tracking Trips now. Visit pastthewire.com and we'll see you in the winner's circle. Remember, nobody does it better.
Does it better.